In the 1930s, a wealthy banker and his wife were dining at an upscale restaurant when a stunning young woman approached their table, gave the husband a passionate kiss, and said, "I'll see you later," before walking away. The wife, glaring at her husband, demanded, "Who on earth was that?" The husband, somewhat embarrassed, replied, "Oh, she's just my mistress." His wife, fuming, snapped, "Well, that's it. I've had enough. I want a divorce." "I can understand that," the husband replied. "But remember, if we get a divorce, it'll mean no more shopping trips to Paris, no more winters in Barbados, no more summers in Tuscany, no more expensive cars in the garage, and no more yacht club membership. But of course the decision is yours." Just then, their mutual friend Jim entered the restaurant, walking arm in arm with a gorgeous woman. The wife, eyeing the couple, asked, "Who's that woman with Jim?" "That's his mistress," the husband replied. The wife paused for a moment, then said, "Well, ours is prettier." There was once a cruel king who enjoyed executing anyone who displeased him. One day, a minister gave him some advice that the king did not like, and in his rage, the king decided to have him executed. He ordered the minister to be thrown to the ravenous guard dogs. The minister, knowing his fate, fell to his knees and pleaded, "I have served you loyally for 10 years, and you would do this to me for one mistake." The king, however, was merciless. "Please, give me just 10 days before you throw me to the dogs," the minister begged. The king, intrigued by the minister's audacity, agreed. 10 days. After that, you will face the dogs. In those 10 days, the minister went to the keeper of the dogs and told him he wanted to feed and care for them. The keeper was puzzled, but agreed to the arrangement. For 10 days, the minister fed the dogs, washed them, and gave them every comfort, all the while treating them with kindness and attention. When the 10 days were up, the king ordered the minister to be thrown to the dogs as promised. To everyone's shock, the ferocious guard dogs, instead of attacking the minister, greeted him with wagging tails and began to play with him, even licking his feet. The king was astounded and demanded, "What has happened to my vicious dogs? Why are they behaving like this?" The minister, still on his knees, looked up and said, "I served those dogs for only 10 days, and they didn't forget my service. But I have served you for 10 years, and you have forgotten all of it over one mistake." The king, deeply moved by the minister's words, realized the gravity of his actions. The next day, he replaced the dogs with crocodiles. 3 retired gentlemen were sitting together, enjoying coffee and reminiscing about their past adventures. After a while, one of them suggested they share their most exciting experience. The first, a retired sheriff, leaned back and said, "Well, back in my day, I had a face-to-face shootout with none other than Bonnie and Clyde. The bullets were flying, and the adrenaline was like nothing I'd ever felt." The others nodded in awe, agreeing that sounded incredibly thrilling. The second, a retired fireman, chimed in, "That's impressive, but I've got you both beat. I once responded to a massive fire at the university. There were flames shooting into the sky, fire trucks from all over, and, of course, many damsels in distress to save. It was pure chaos, but also the most exhilarating thing I've ever experienced." The sheriff and the undertaker nodded in agreement. It sounded like a truly exciting moment. Finally, the third gentleman, a retired undertaker, smiled and said, "Well, my most exciting experience happened one night when I got called to pick up a body from the local Hilton Hotel. I got to the room and saw the body lying under a sheet. Everything seemed normal. Until I noticed a huge bulge. I had no idea what to do. There was no way I could walk that body through the lobby like that." The fireman, intrigued, asked, "So what did you do?" The undertaker sighed. I grabbed an old broom and gave that bulge the hardest whack I could to make it go down. The sheriff raised an eyebrow. That doesn't sound very exciting. The undertaker paused for dramatic effect before revealing, "Turns out I was in the wrong room." A wealthy man had been having an affair with an Italian woman. One evening, during one of their secret meetings, she confided in him that she was pregnant. Not wanting to ruin his reputation or his marriage, he quickly offered her a large sum of money if she would go to Italy to have the child. He promised he would provide child support until the child turned 18, but only if she went back to Italy. She agreed, but asked how he would know when the baby was born. To keep everything discreet, he suggested that she mail him a postcard with just one word written on the back: spaghetti. That way, he would know and could arrange the child support. Months later, the man returned home to find his wife looking puzzled. "Honey," she said, holding up a postcard, "you got a very strange card today." "Just give it to me," he said quickly. "I'll explain it later." He took the card, and as he read it, his face turned white. He dropped the card in shock and fainted on the floor. Alarmed, his wife picked it up and read aloud, "Spaghetti, spaghetti, spaghetti. 2 with meatballs, 1 without." The captain called the sergeant in. "Sarge, I just got a telegram that Smith's mother passed away yesterday. You need to go tell him and then send him to see me." So the sergeant calls the troops together for morning formation. "Listen up, men," says the sergeant. "Johnson, head over to personnel to sign some papers. The rest of you report to the motor pool for maintenance. And, Smith, your mother passed away. Report to the commander." Later that day, the captain calls the sergeant into his office. "Sarge, that was really cold. You could have been more tactful in delivering the news to Smith." "Yes, sir," the sergeant replies. A few months later, the captain calls the sergeant in again. "Sarge, I just got another telegram. James's mother passed away. Go tell him, but this time, be more tactful." So the sergeant calls for morning formation again. "All right, men, listen up. Everybody with a mother take 2 steps forward." "Not so fast, James." A young man named Joe bought a horse from a farmer for $250. The farmer agreed to deliver the horse in a few days. A couple of days later, the farmer showed up and said, "Sorry, son, but I have some bad news." "The horse died," Joe replied. "Well then, just give me my money back." The farmer sighed. "Can't do that. I've already spent it." Joe thought for a moment and said, "Okay, then, just bring me the dead horse." The farmer raised an eyebrow. "What are you gonna do with it?" Joe grinned. "I'm going to raffle him off." The farmer laughed. "You can't raffle a dead horse." Joe shrugged. "Sure I can. Watch me. I won't tell anyone he's dead." A month later, the farmer ran into Joe and asked, "So, what happened with that dead horse?" Joe replied, "I raffled him off. Sold 500 tickets at $5 each and made a profit of $2,495. The farmer looked stunned. "Didn't anyone complain?" Joe shrugged. "Just the guy who won." So I gave him his $5 back. On their wedding night, after a long and awkward struggle, the groom found himself frustrated and out of breath. He was not able to put that in. He finally blurted out, "No one has been here before me." The bride, already irritated, raised an eyebrow and snapped, "Listen here, genius, whoever got here before. He removed the panties first." 2 old friends, Jake and Oliver, met up for lunch after not seeing each other for over 20 years. "How have you been?" Oliver asked. "I've been good," Jake replied. "Married with 2 great kids works a bit dull, but it pays the bills. How about you? How's life treating you?" Oliver puffed out his chest proudly. Well, I've been living the dream. Moved out from my parents' place early. Lucky enough that I didn't need to work much. Spent most of my time reading, going to the gym, and pursuing hobbies. Money hasn't been much of an issue either. And the action. I wasn't much of a player when we were younger, but these days I'm getting laid every single day. Jake listened, a bit envious of Oliver's carefree, exciting life. The two friends parted after lunch, and later that night, Jake sat down to dinner with his family when the phone rang. "Hello, is this Jake?" asked a voice on the other end. "Yes, this is Jake. How can I help you?" "I'm trying to track down Oliver. You're listed as one of his contacts," the voice explained. "Okay, who's this?" Jake asked, now confused. "This is Oliver's parole officer."